Welcome to the Found Her podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Shannon.
And we are the filmmaker, photographer, and co-founders of Found Her Productions. Together, we capture the essence of women so they can communicate their truth with confidence and ease.
Through working with our clients, we've learned that each of their stories are so unique and, to our surprise, mostly nonlinear. We believe these stories deserve to be heard to inspire women along their own journey to finding themselves and creating the life that they truly desire.
This podcast is where badass, trailblazing boss ladies will expose the ups, the downs, and everything else involved in creating their own path in work and in life.
So sit back, get comfy, and get ready
to be inspired. Welcome back to the Found Her podcast. We are especially thrilled today because this is officially our first episode of the podcast where we have a guest with us. Our initial intention with this podcast was to have guests on every episode so that we could interview them and have them share their real and honest stories with us in hopes of inspiring women that are listening, that are on their very own journey of accomplishing big things. There is so much power in solidarity. So hearing stories from others that are relatable to whichever part of your journey you're on are always so helpful to hear. So we could not be happier to have this particular guest with us for our very first interview. Allow us to introduce the wonderful Erin. Jen is a Toronto-based fiber artist and entrepreneur. She is the founder of Erin Studio, as well as Open Hearts Weaving Workshops. She's also a mother and a wife. She was a former professional and successful photographer and transitioned her creative career into weaving, which we look forward to hearing more about that part of her story in particular. Jen is also known for her magnetic and vibrant presence, and she is constantly expanding and evolving her practice and herself personally. Jen was one of our very first clients at Found Her Productions, and since beginning to work with her just over a year ago now, we have witnessed that growth and expansion firsthand, and it's always so impressive and so inspiring to watch, so we can't wait to dig into that a little bit more as well. Hi, Jen.
Yes. Welcome, Jen.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for being our first guest.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you. And we wanted to kick things off on a really high note and invite you to share a big win or a big brag of yours with the listeners. And the reason that we want to feature or we want to ask our guests to share their wins and share their brags with us and their audience unapologetically is because we want to normalize women recognizing and celebrating their wins so that other women can see that it's a totally safe thing to do. So basically it's the concept of when you show up and shine your light, other people can see that they can shine their light too. So on that note, what would you like to
Spotlight's on you, Jen.
You know, this particular Friday in February of what's coming up to be a year of COVID lockdown life. And it's like the peak of winter right now. And what's interesting to me is I'm always thinking about wins and like focusing on the good. And you know, if you asked me this yesterday, I might have a different answer. If you asked me this morning, I would have another answer. But right now in this moment, you know, my big, huge win is that I'm by myself in my studio, surrounded by 2 commissions, which are going to be, one is going to be shipped internationally to the UK. The other is going to be shipped to the other side of the country in BC. I'm working towards a beautiful installation at the Gladstone Hotel in a couple of months. It'll be there by May. And I've just basically booked 2021 for private commissions.
Oh my gosh.
I will also say as a win today on this Friday, right now, my beautiful 7-year-old son is at home on online school navigating Safari tabs and Zoom lessons, and all he needs are snacks. And he's good to go. And my amazing husband, who is also, he's an elementary school teacher, is at home with our son. And I'm here. I'm out in the world, sort of, in my private studio. And I feel like that's a huge win to recognize. You know, like this whole pandemic and this whole a lot of stamina that is being required of us right now, for me, like, to move forward and to be able to recognize how amazing I have it. I wrote to a friend the other day. I was like, I swear I can't really share how good I feel right now because it's not fair. And I mean that jokingly, because what you said in the beginning was really true. Like, we have to be able to own where we're at, and we can't, I mean, like, we're all in this with the pandemic. There's other things that happen. Life happens. Shit happens. Big shit happens. And, you know, being able to, like, recognize still the good and move forward and be in action, that's a win.
Yeah.
It's a huge win. Yeah, a lot of people are putting their businesses on pause right now. So to see that you haven't really lost any momentum, in fact, you appear to have gained momentum, that's, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Huge win. I was having actually a similar conversation with a friend recently about this whole kind of like this whole pandemic situation. I think people almost feel like they have to be feeling stressed or unhappy or anxious because it's almost like expected of us to just be sitting in that place. But even if you're not feeling that way, you can subconsciously go looking for reasons to be feeling unhappy because it's like expected that we're all feeling the same way. But
it's almost like that's what you do to fit in right now.
Exactly. Like if someone's like, how are you doing? You know, you're tempted to be like, oh, fine, I guess, you know, when really you might be like, I'm doing fucking awesome. And I'm I'm great right now. It's not the norm, but you never know who you might pull out of that kind of low place by just being honest about it and like not feeling like shameful about it. You know, you shouldn't feel shameful about something like that. So that's awesome. Yeah, definitely brag-worthy. So we thought that it might be fun to kind of kick it off with just talking about this past year for you. As we kind of mentioned in our introduction there, we've been working closely with you for the past year. So we've seen the growth you've experienced in this past year. So we would love to kind of hear a little bit about that experience of your expansion over the past 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, this month was a year ago when we had our first shoot together.
Almost exactly a year.
Yeah, at one of my Open Hearts weaving classes. And then we squeezed in another beautiful studio shoot right before.
Yes. Right before.
I think it was March 4th.
That was perfect timing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like a week before or something.
Lucky us. Lucky me.
Lucky us.
You know, it's so interesting, like looking at a year in hindsight, or looking at anything in hindsight is like that retrospective, perfect 2020 vision. I can see now that I have totally expanded in terms of like, you know, my studio production, but as an artist, I've learned so much about myself in in life because of what's gone on. But I think that beautiful thing about hindsight is that I can say, and I'm pretty sure I had been laying this foundation and this groundwork the year before that and the year before that. And I really feel like sometimes I look around and I'm like, I cannot believe it. I mean, I can believe it, but it's like, I just look around, I'm like, holy fuck, it's happening. My studio is what I've pictured, and these works on the wall are like better than I imagined in my mind, you know, years and years ago. It's like, I think it's all part and parcel of everything converging in the right time. and last year was also 2020 for me was my first year like after my dad died, after having survived him. And it really, I was, very much in my grief, consciously and emotionally. And I really grew. And I don't think it's an accident or a coincidence that my personal growth from going through such a huge loss personally, like for me, and then, being authentic to what I was going through and also the opportunities that were coming my way, and using that to propel me further, I think contributed a lot. So, and the pandemic, right? There's all a whole bunch of things that, in retrospect, I can see like really contributed to my growth and my expansion.
So interesting. Sorry, I was going to say, like, in a lot of the materials out there, they say that two things kind of incite growth, and that's the desire to grow and then moments of impact. And it sounds like you kind of had a bit of both going on, if not a lot of both going on in 2020 or the year before that, in fact. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how you turned to your work and you noticed so much growth in that area. Would you say that when you stop and think about it, that the growth shows up in other areas of your life too, or is it specifically in the area of your work?
That's a great question. I think it's more readily expressed in my work because I'm creating tangible artwork and weavings, which are like a literal expression of my experience. But I've really transformed as a person, as a woman. And I think it's in a strange way, 2019 was a really hard year for me because we lost my dad, and it was a very, intense experience. And it wasn't sudden. So it was, but it was 8 months of crazy, and it was really heavy. And, just starting to come out of the fog of that. And then this pandemic hit. In some ways, I want to say that I'm grateful that I had that year before because, in a very strange way, I felt like fucking pandemic. This is nothing. Like,
oh yeah. If I could handle what I handled last year, I can handle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so that kind of, I don't know, it was like a personal, like, secret armor. And I wouldn't wish for it, obviously, but I was grateful. I saw right away, I knew what was happening for me. It was like, well, I've had the bottom fall out of daily life. I mean, it's been a roller coaster already. And in some ways I was even appreciative that, in some strange way, like, well, at least my life looks like I'm home, I'm with my husband, I'm with my son. I mean, I'm really home with my husband and my son, right? Like, we couldn't, last winter was, we really didn't go anywhere, but, anyways, so yeah, I think it all kind of like cascaded and bloomed and percolated like all together beautifully. And as I said, in hindsight, I can see that. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
It does answer the question. Yeah. I'm always kind of paying attention to, when I notice a variance in my results or an improvement in my results, I'm always like, I wonder where else this is showing up. Cause I feel like everything is so like closely tied into one another, each area of our lives. Definitely. So it's kind of fun to recognize like what's happening alongside of the work wins or alongside of the relationship wins or whatever, when those are our focus.
That's so wise.
Trickle into each other. I think it's interesting the way you framed it too. These like moments of impact, I guess, as Shannon described them, which I think most people hearing that would would see as being like a negatively impacting, but you're describing it as like your moment of growth, which is so interesting to kind of flip it that way.
It sounds like you were really able to find the good in a really tough situation.
I mean, yeah, that's I am, I do, I was. I mean, it's still happening for me, but you know, it's my outlook, right? It's like, it's my attitude. And I've been working on that, as you both know, for 3 years already. And it's like, without any of that, you know, without like, a very grounded, like meditation practice and a, you know, routine journaling practice, and, you know, that I had already begun to learn how to like have faith in myself and trust myself and know that though things were uncertain, and things always, I mean, they still are, there's lots of uncertainty. It's like, I described it actually at the time as, like I was unhinged, but not derailed.
Oh, yes.
You know, and before, like my younger years, and, you know, really like up until 3 years ago, I I would have been derailed, just derailed. And like you said, Kelsey, at the beginning, I think just, you know, in society and culture, like we are conditioned to use, you know, negative and crappy things that happen to us as ways to indulge in that pain. And I'm not saying that I didn't indulge in my pain, but I accepted it. I was nice to it. I like nurtured myself at the same time. And I do this now too. Like there's pain all the time on different levels. It's not always deep grief, but, you know, I had to flip that switch for myself, because for most of my life, it was like, you know, a reason to stop everything and stop working, or, you know, well, not stop working, like you can't have that luxury all the time, but like that idea of just like, well, this is happening to me. And so X, Y, and Z can't happen now. It's like, I have a growth mindset and I have an abundance mindset. And so I'm looking for the good and, you know, trying to be grateful for what I can be grateful for. I have so much to be grateful for.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think the gratitude plays a big part in taking these difficult situations and moving forward in a positive way.
Yeah.
With your chin up. Yeah. You mentioned Jen 3 years ago. Just for fun, can we go back to high school? And what were you like in high school? Is Jen like in high school?
Yes.
What was Jen like in high school? Yikes.
Yeah.
Wild,
Okay.
rebellious. I went to a private.
I feel like we would have been good friends.
Oh, I know we would have.
BFFs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I went to this private school and we had, you know, uniforms, and I wanted my skirt to be
Really?
shorter than it was allowed to be. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, oh my God. Just all I'll say is wild and rebellious. However, I was also a really good student. I really liked to excel. I sat at the front of the class when I was in class, and I liked getting good marks. I liked achieving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just doing it on your
always
terms,
my
though.
terms. Yeah. And always a dichotomy. I'm a Gemini, right? So it's like both sides of the coin,
Yeah.
one way and the other.
I'm a Gemini too. I can relate to that. So wild and rebellious Jen eventually shifted into a creative career. Like, at what point in your life did you know that you were kind of going into that path, that kind of creative career path?
Always.
I always just knew that about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I'm not that much of a planner necessarily. So it's not like I was 6 and I was like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be a photographer and I'm going to do this. But art was a really like impactful experience for me when I was growing up. I I was an only child. I grew up as an only child. I have 2 siblings, but they're older than me. They didn't grow up in the same house as me. So I was raised as an only child. And, there was a lot of time where I was left to my own devices to like sort my emotions out or figure out. I mean, my parents weren't absent. They were wonderful parents, but I didn't have that, what I fantasized to be like siblings to kind of relate to. So oftentimes art for me was like this real portal into like a way to express myself, a way to make sense of what was confusing in my mind. I mean, as a tween or then a teenager, like that stuff is confusing.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's confusing, but like you also just think you know everything at the time.
Yes, that too.
So,
I feel like art in a way allowed me to think even more like I knew what I was thinking or what was going on inside me. But I guess it happened in grade 10. I was dropping French, and art was the only thing that fit in that slot in my schedule. And so I had 4 years of an amazing art teacher named Mrs. Varley in Ottawa, and we had a dark room in the school, like in the art room. And I just I found like the art room was the place where I could shed all of the like versions of me that people thought that I was, even my own self. Like I didn't rebel and I wasn't wild in the art room. I was just like myself, I did bold things in or what I thought was bold at the time, but I wasn't out to prove anything. I was just like, I was so like humbled. I was really excited by it.
Sounds like flowy energy in the art room.
Yeah.
Instead versus resistance.
Yeah,
maybe
I was just thinking
elsewhere.
that the kind of the rebelliousness is usually a sign of like resistance to something that's just not aligned, right? But if you're kind of like in your flow state there, that's so interesting. What a cool thing to discover.
I don't think that I had put that together in quite this dot connecting way as to this very second of talking to you both.
Isn't hindsight so great?
It's amazing. It's so true. It was total flow state. And not that it all came easily. Like I worked really hard at, learning how to draw and to paint and, do photography. But
the resistance wasn't there though. It sounds like by the sounds of it. Yeah. It sounds like you were like more than happy to be challenged in that way, in that space.
1,000%.
Yeah. That's so cool.
That is very cool.
That's so cool. So you discovered that and you had that energy in that space. And how did that transfer from being just something that you enjoyed learning about and doing to I'm going to do this, or I'm going to have a career in art one way or another?
Well, I guess, like you go along in high school and then all of a sudden like you're graduating and you're applying for university like all of your friends. And I guess I just... I couldn't imagine wanting to do anything else but a fine arts degree. So I just made all my applications and, I applied. I ended up at Ryerson here in Toronto, and I really didn't think I would get in. I didn't necessarily have such a focus towards photography. No pun intended.
Nice one.
Just thought I'd slip that in there.
Clicked. No pun intended.
Very cool.
Let me frame it this way.
We could keep going all day. I think.
We can't.
Seriously. We could keep going, but we should shut it down right there.
Oh boy.
I didn't even mean to make that one a joke. Okay. Maybe we can't shut it down right there.
We'll never get out of this loop.
Well, I'll just widen the aperture as to say that,
just when you thought she was done.
I know. That basically of all the schools that I applied to, I was accepted at Ryerson, which, at the time was a huge kind of like surprise. And I took it. And, it was amazing. It was like I was at art school I grew up in Ottawa, so Toronto was like, I was living at like Yonge and Dundas was the big city.
Yeah.
And
it's quite the introduction to the city.
Totally. It's a real intersection. So and I loved it. You know, I had a whole bunch of my high school friends who were all at more typical kinds of schools with like real frosh weeks and like homecoming and all that stuff. And I was like, and they're all trying to skip class. And for the first time, I was at school morning till night in the dark room, just exploring and loving art school, dyeing my hair raspberry pink and, doing all the things. And I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
That's awesome. What was it about photography that you loved at the time?
I think it was just I liked learning the technicalities as far as like getting better at something. But I just enjoyed, or I don't know if I enjoyed it at the time, but I was super interested in how with photography, it's all about perspective. And so my own version of what I was seeing was different than the person next to me. And it sort of was this like existential awakening about life and everyone has a unique perspective, and trying to sort of like capture in photographs what's the human experience like, what are relationships like, what are people like? And there's the outer world and the inner world. It was like, for me, it was more philosophical and conceptual. And I loved it. I was like really drawn to that part. Yeah. Amazing. And I graduated. I was like, I'm never going to sell out. I'm only going to do art photography. I'm an artist.
And then what happened? Yeah.
Right. And then what happened? Well, I mean, some pretty amazing things happened. I graduated, and that summer I went to go work in Santa Fe at the Santa Fe Photographic Workshops. And I mean, nestled in like the spiritual center of Santa Fe and working at these incredible, like this workshop setting, this school basically for photography that just the most amazing renowned photographers were teaching week-long workshops for like 10 weeks straight. It was a new immersion into a new kind of photography that I was like, I was just like a sponge, just sucking it all up and meeting other people and being, in Santa Fe. It was like really, really cool and awakening, and just lots was happening. And then I ended up, I'm just going to try and make this long story short, but I ended up assisting some photojournalists shooting in New Zealand, shooting Eco Challenge, which was a Mark Burnett production. It was like this adventure race that went on every year in a different place. It was like a 3-week race. It was wild and crazy. And I went as an assistant and basically like saw these like big time, photojournalists, like photographers and it was a huge set. There was all over the South Island of New Zealand. I was like, I had to learn how to drive stick in a camper van on the wrong side of the road. It was like wild. Going up in a helicopter to like bring a big lens to like the photographer that I was working for. It was really cool. And I had always had those like fantasies about like, I want to work at National Geographic one day, And these guys were like, some of them did work at National Geographic. So I ended up getting a job working for one of the photographers in Maryland. And I went for a year and I learned all this digital photography and I learned about photojournalism. And, it was a much different side of photography than what I had left art school, enthralled with. But I really was able to switch from film into digital. I learned about workflow. I learned about what to do. How do you handle tens of thousands of images at once? how do you deal with clients, all that stuff. So I also realized that a photojournalist life is not for me. It's hard. You're at the whim and mercy of the story, and always living out of a bag. It's very hard to have relationships. And so I left there kind of at a real fork in the road. Not quite, I had all this whole new skill set within photography that I was like, well, you know, I am an artist deep down, but at the same time, that notion of the starving artist just wasn't appealing.
Right.
It just wasn't. Like, I was just like, I've now been, then, you know, we did another eco challenge in Fiji while I was working with them. Like, we really traveled and saw cool things and did amazing stuff. And, so yeah. Anyways, to make a long story short, I met my now husband and I dragged him to Toronto. He was ready to like travel all over and let's go live like on a cliff in Colorado. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
No, you know what? I'm done. I've been traveling and working, and I need like one couch and an apartment and like my toothbrush in one place. And I really want to see if I can make something of this skill that I now have. And he was like, all right, I'll give you 2 years tops in Toronto. And then we are out of here.
Where did you guys meet?
We met in Ottawa. He's from Ottawa also. So we kind of, we were both sort of there at that crossroads, both figuring out what was next. And we fell in love and, you know, all that fun stuff.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. So we came here, and as I said, he said 2 years and then we're out of here. And that was, oh my God, that was like 15 years ago.
And you're still here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you made something out of it.
So where was your photography career at that point when you decided to kind of like find some stability here? And
I think I was just eager to make money and see what I could do. And I thought we were on a 2-year timeline also. So I was sort of like, I can just try things, you know? And I ended up starting with just a lot of events. And Sean, my husband, he's an elementary school teacher. I said he was at this private school at the time. And there was a lot of events through like the families that were part of that school. And so I ended up getting a bunch of clients and I learned a lot, and I was making money, and it felt really good. And it expanded from there. I ended up, for 13 years I had my business, and we, eventually I got out of actual events, and I just did more portraits. I did weddings. And I always had this like side dream of, selling my fine artwork. All this work from like my traveling days, is still sitting in various forms and slides and negs and prints and archival print boxes. And I'm just like, that was then. I don't know. It just, yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Okay.
No, you're telling your story.
All right.
We are listening attentively.
We're really going down memory lane.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to see. I was just thinking about how when you're working in like a creative career, like as an artist, there is a business side to it. And how do you hold on to that kind of like artistic freedom and expression when you're having to be concerned about the business side of things as well?
The bottom line.
Yeah.
I mean, are you asking yourself
when you
this
remove
question?
that? Yeah. I ask myself this all the time.
We're asking for a friend.
Yeah. We have no interest in this topic.
That's one of the biggest, I'll say this. I didn't have that balance. And that's precisely why I fell very much out of love with my camera and ended up leaving photography as a business because I didn't. I think maybe I just decided that I couldn't do both. you know. And there were times over the years where I would say, you know what, I just need a personal project. You know, a lot of mentors and you know, other photographers, most artists would say, if you're working commercially, you're in business as an artist, as a photographer, the most important thing is to maintain a personal body of work, because that is what connects you to your artistic freedom. I mean, the name of the game is that when you are a successful artist or photographer or filmmaker or painter or what have you, I mean, there is some level of boundary that you have to, you know, you have to put yourself in order to have a really successful business, right? It's not necessarily negative. It's not always like, oh, I'm being held back by my clients. Hopefully, and you guys are doing this. I mean, you are deciding who you want to work with, what kinds of people, what kinds of work, and it's very evident with your growing business that it's all aligned, right? But at the end of the day, to say that you know, and I felt like that too. I really had good relationships with my clients, and you know, people would say to me this, like, they'd be like, oh, you shoot weddings, like you must have so many bridezillas. And I was like, I don't actually, because I don't attract bridezillas. Like a true bridezilla wouldn't want to work with me. So, but to be successful and to deliver what you promise, unless you're outright saying, I am an artist, and I don't know why I just made this like artiste, but it's like
artist.
Yeah, like if I will, you know, it's almost like a it butts up against each other, the two ideas, to say I'm going to have full creative freedom and deliver what my clients want. You can find a beautiful balance, and I think that's the goal. Yeah. But I think if you know, what I could have done, maybe in hindsight again, is just really carved that time and been clear about committing to making my own personal work, and that has nothing to do with, you know, delivering to a client or my business, you know?
The business.
Yeah. It's so easy to like forget that and get caught up into the like commercial side or like the client work, because that's what pays the bills, right? Typically. So that always seems to take priority. But at the same time, if you're eliminating your space to create for yourself, you end up feeling resentment towards the work you're doing for the clients, which isn't good for you, and it's not good for your clients either, right?
The whole thing.
So by maybe freeing up the space, when you're looking at it like, oh, well, by eliminating some client work to do my own work, I won't be making as much money. But maybe by freeing up that space for yourself, you are improving your relationship with the work, and but like therefore creating better work, therefore maybe even making more money doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little more indirect, but it can be so easy to forget to put priority on that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like, I also think there's something around just length of life. It's like I started my business, I was like 28 or 27, and I couldn't see as far as like the end of my nose, you know? And now, like, I'm 42, and I can see clearly, like, I can look back and be like, whoa, 20 years ago, like, I was 22. Like, that's like, I can see that you have to sort of put these supports in place for the long haul. And I'm so actually really glad we're having this conversation, because when I mean, to make a long story short, I became a weaver. And, you know, anyways, and we can get into that in a sec, but that's what my business is now. And you know, there's been a huge limiting belief that I've had to get over, which is that if you start making money from your artistic passion, you know, that for me, what happened with photography, that I fell out of love with my camera and felt like I had sold out and the whole thing was yucky. You know, I love fiber art so much, and I was really afraid when I started to that might happen again. And, I was sitting here before we got on this call, this interview, and I was sort of like looking around, and this has been, rumbling around in my head for quite some time recently, which is I got to do the personal work. I really, I am so grateful for these commissions that I'm doing and the opportunities that are coming my way. And at the same time, I know from experience, if I don't put in that time to put in that boundary and say, like, I need to just explore in my own way without any kind of end point, because I want to do this forever. Right. And if I have like 50 more years, 60, 70, 80 more years or whatever, with the inflation of lifespan, over time, maybe,
right.
maybe, so like, I just know if I don't pay attention to that little voice that's telling me, like, slow down, it's okay to take that time. Yeah. It's not just about the money. And if it is just about the money, then it's so easy to think that that's our driving force. And it's not. It can't be the only driving force when you're doing something creative and artistic,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's such a great lesson to take away from your former career, to kind of just slow yourself down and enjoy it.
And what would you say some of the other driving forces are for you, Jen?
Just growth and expansion.
Yeah. And like witnessing the progress that you're making and
like I'm often like just blown away. I'm like, holy shit, like I get to do this. And, I feel like because with photography, there was something intangible about it. You're in a moment, you take a picture, you have that image, like there, but you've now with digital, it's on a screen and then it's floating around on other screens on the web, on the World Wide Web, and or it's in a frame. But this for me, like being in a studio where this form of process for me is like I can see all these tangible materials and tangible works in progress. It's so tangible. And, for so long I was so used to working on my computer, editing and all of that. And some people like totally love that part of the process. But for me, I'm all about the eye candy. And so in my studio, it's like, it's all eye candy.
You're literally surrounded by your work.
I am. And I love it. So like that's a driver too, right? I love this version of what studio life is, I claim it and say I'm a studio-based artist. Like, it's amazing that I do finish pieces, because really I could sit in the experimentation like all the time and be fascinated and totally motivated and captivated.
That's amazing. Just constantly exploring.
Gosh, the pieces just occur as a part of the exploration.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I like that.
Kind of. I mean, sometimes I'm not afraid to admit this. I've had to sort of put new perspectives or way of looking at making money from my art, so I feel good about it, so I don't get sort of sucked down that path of thinking that what will happen with photography will happen here. And one of the ways that I sort of have put it in place for myself, or the way that I look at it, is like I don't really say I'm in business. I run my studio, right? And my studio needs to make money because my studio requires materials and time, and hopefully, and very soon, some assistants and a team and supplies and size, and that we can expand, and that kind of thing. And it helps me. The word business is tricky for me, so I like
it's a bit of a dirty word.
It's a bit of a dirty word, just from my experience. So, but the other thing that I do is I look at all these private commissions. And they're amazing. Like my collectors are incredible. They're all it's funny. Two last week wrote me separately in emails and said they were booking me for on my wait list, and they both said it's a full body yes. They used those exact words. It's a full body yes. Both of them in one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And I was like, I think something's going right for me here.
They're literally feeling it in their body.
They're feeling it.
That is so awesome.
It's so cool. And so at the same time, these collectors who are paying me to make custom pieces about them and their life and their space that they live in, or, the room that the piece will hang in, I've started to look at it like private grant money. Okay. So it's like if, as an artist, artists apply for grants all the time to do different projects and, take it from the beginning to completion. And I just, all of a sudden one day I was like, I could look at this totally like these are little private bursaries that I'm getting that afford me the ability to stay in my studio, continuing to develop my craftsmanship, my expression, my ability to weave and produce. And it's like, it's so cool. It's just like a small perspective shift, but I'm like, it doesn't change.
So interesting
it's great.
It kind of takes the business out of it. Or the client. The client sounds so businessy.
I don't call them clients. I call them collectors.
Collectors. Oh my God.
I can't use the word client anymore. It puts me back in that place where I had clients.
Yeah. Clients. Clients. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Collectors, it sounds, I like that.
And speaking of your collectors, like asking for a friend, just trying to play it cool, really. If someone wants to become a collector, how long do they have to wait now?
Right now, it's at least a year out.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Thank you.
on that.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just want to touch on that really quickly because there's so many, there's a lot of belief around or out there about freelancers or artists not knowing where their next paycheck is coming from. And when you reach this level, it's really not the case anymore, And I think it's really important that is understood, that people are vocal about that might be the case maybe in the beginning or for a brief period, but it doesn't remain that way, or it doesn't have to remain that way.
You can set yourself up.
And I think you're such a good example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
You're
sure.
Right. That is a really good example of that.
It's funny when you mention it in that way, my first thought was, this could be applied to any person working for themselves. It has to do with the abundance mindset, which you both, we've talked about that so much, and learned about it so much. Is that approaching things from an abundant place and appreciating what you have appreciates what you have, right? It's it literally does that. It's when you clue into it and realize that that's the case, and that there are always opportunities, and there's always unlimited potential and infinite potential in every person. It's just anything's possible.
Anything is possible. And I wished personally that I would have kind of entertained that thought a lot more when I was thinking about starting a business myself, because I was definitely entertaining many more limiting beliefs and fears, where's my next paycheck going to come from? I was one of those people that believed that. Yeah. But you must have been rubbing off on us as we were working with you over the last year, because now we have a wait list.
Yeah, you do.
So, yeah. So.
It's amazing. Of course you do. That doesn't even surprise me in the least. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, we're pretty happy about that. That's for sure. And now we're believers too that if you put your mind to it, you can have a wait list if you want and never have to worry or wonder where your next paycheck's coming from if you make the decision not to, or if you make the decision to know, where your next one is coming from.
Completely. Just completely.
And to know long term. Like, you can know for the next year, you can know for the next, whatever, 5 years if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next year when I'm ready to get my Jen Erin commission piece, what's the process going to look like, or what does it look like today? And do you imagine it changing by next year?
So the process today, I'll do the today because it's as I said, I'm not necessarily a total planner, and I do really enjoy that because I'm constantly growing and expanding. It means I'm always learning. And I love learning. So every piece I learn something new. I change the way I approach the next one or the process of the commission. Today, how it looks is when I'm, we would meet, which now those meetings are usually on FaceTime or Zoom. And I get to take a look at where the space is that the piece will hang. And then it's funny, there's in these sort of discovery calls, we end up having conversations that are deep and it's not funny. I usually have deep conversations with people. That's like, I'm not much for small talk. So we get to this place where, and I just trust that it's going to happen where as we talk and as we just follow where the conversation goes, that becomes the inspiration for the piece. And so I do that sort of gathering of information. I'm taking notes. We're chatting. We're talking. There's, I'll have them measure the space and take pictures in non-COVID times. And if they are local in Toronto, I would just go myself and feel the energy and all the rest of it. And then it takes me about a month or so to kind of start gathering concepts, figuring out maybe some materials, a color palette. Like I'm just sort of figuring out what it is I want to do. And then at that point, I present them with sort of a plan. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm envisioning. Here's the colors. These are all the materials I'd like to use. And then once they sign off on that, they basically don't see anything until the piece is hanging on their wall. And that can be anywhere from, 2 to 3 months later. So it's really cool because what ends up happening is, there's just so much trust, and I accept that. They trust me, and I use that all the time. I have to, or else I'd second guess and it would be like this whole different process. I think the people who love my work love it because I put my whole self into it, and I'm almost like weaving I don't know, for lack of a better word, like a portrait of who they are, in a sense, right?
Oh my gosh.
From your perspective.
From my perspective. And so, it would be strange if partway through I was like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? They don't, these types of people who come to me for this, it's so decadent to have somebody make a custom piece of original artwork about you and for you.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's and I'm learning that. I'm like, I didn't realize that so much right at the beginning, but I'm really like sitting in that because it's the best part. It's it allows me to contemplate another person or a relationship or a family or their dynamics or their life or what have you for months on end while I create what I hope to be what I think is a beautiful piece of artwork. And then there's often like some tears, some really that feeling of being seen. I think we all as humans, just really want to be known and be seen at the bottom base level. And, in a really cool way, I get to show people how I see them.
Oh my gosh.
It's really amazing. Yeah. It sounds like you take the piece from being just a beautiful piece of art, and through your process, you're injecting all of this meaning into it.
It's so intentional.
And it's very personalized to the people. So I could see that being like very decadent and like a treat of an experience to give to yourself as a collector.
Well, as an example, I mean, we can see what's hanging behind you right now. This absolutely brilliant Oh my God.
piece.
So for those that are just listening, Jen's sitting in her studio right now and we can see her and we can see this piece hanging on the wall, on the loom behind her that we've been documenting for you. Can you share as an example the story of how that came together? Because it's so gorgeous and the story is so amazing.
It is an amazing story. So this is the piece that is about to be shipped out to BC, to Victoria. And this is just such a beautiful woman. She, we kind of knew of each other growing up. So there was like a little bit of we have mutual friends, but we didn't ever really, I didn't really know her. And a couple of years ago, she reached out and asked if I would do a piece for her, and it wasn't the right timing. And then, about 6 months ago, she reached out again, and it was the right timing, because here I am ready. And so we did a FaceTime. Obviously, she's in Victoria, so we did a FaceTime, and she said, it's my 10-year anniversary with my husband. I'd really like to sort of this be the gift, and it's going to be in our bedroom. And she showed me like this gorgeous house. There are mid-century modern touches, and here's our color scheme, and this is where we're at. And then I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, for about an hour and a half, she just told me like their story from when they met to, they've lived all over the world, and they've had 2 kids, and there was ups and downs, and just from when they met, and then like got engaged and got married and had kids, and they've lived in Paris and in Calgary and in London, and there's just like, it was like this wild story. I won't give too much away because it's quite personal, but it was just this like story full of ups and downs and all these inspiring things, and the things that she was saying about her husband and about her experiences were like, and that whole time we stayed connected. Or she would say, I really just felt like I could be myself with him always. And these beautiful things. And so, we got to the present day in the story, and she was like, yeah, she was just like, so what do you think? And I just said, do you trust me? And she was like, yeah. She's like, I totally trust you. And I said, okay, I'm going to weave the story you just told me. That's what I want to make your piece about. And
oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Honestly, that's how it went. I did. I showed her, when about a month later, I guess I showed her, probably a little longer than that. I'm tightening up my process now, but it was a little lengthy then. I showed her the palette. I said, these are dark teals and pops of yellow and creamies and grays, and this is the color scheme. And she was like, awesome. And she really didn't hear from me until I said, okay, it's finished. It's ready for you.
Which was how long?
It was a few weeks ago, actually.
Okay.
So, and that's what I'm still figuring out. Like, do I work on a few pieces at once, or do I just work on one for 3 months and then another one for 3 months? And so I'm figuring that out. Thankfully, the people that I work with are always just like, whenever it's ready, Jen, it's going to be amazing. You do your thing. There's no deadline.
That's such a great testament to how much they trust you and how much they know, like, by giving you the time and space that you need, they know that they're going to get the most from it. Like, that's such a wonderful rapport to have with your collectors.
It is, and I'm so grateful for it all the time, because it's not what I ever imagined. I always thought, like, to be a working artist, selling work privately, doing custom pieces, there would have to be a level of sales involved, and there would, like, and the dirty sales, or, that commissions automatically mean limits and boundaries on my creativity. And I just decided to do it differently. I just decided to do it my way, and really trust that the people who wanted my work were on that same page, where they want the energy that I put into the work, and they're not sitting there wanting to tell me what colors to use and how they want it to look. Those people are not for me. They're for someone else.
Yeah. Right.
No judgment.
That's actually a really, really important thing to hear, because I think that a lot of times, especially when you're starting out in a new business or offering a new service or whatever it may be, you feel like you have to fit certain molds in order to make sales, right? I think Jen's nodding like aggressively. Major. When really, when you're just unafraid to just be who you are, you actually end up just attracting people like you. And then you don't end up with those like clients from hell or, that sort of thing, because you're attracting people that are attracted to who you truly are. Like that's such an important thing.
Yeah.
For anyone that's starting out. And it takes time to learn that and get comfortable to be in that. But oh my God, it's critical. Because otherwise you're attracting what you don't want, people you don't want to be dealing with.
Totally. And I think just looping it back to one of the first questions you asked me when you said, like last, a year ago you were in one place and now you're in this place. Like, how'd you get to this point? At the beginning of last year and through the beginning of the pandemic, at the beginning of 2020, I studied the law of attraction. I studied it like it was my job. And I think that, and I really studied it, and I meditated on it, and I was really trying to learn about it. And when I guess at a certain point, it's like all these commissions literally fell out of the sky. And I'm saying that sarcastically because I know that I did it. I attracted. And the reason I know it is I just studied the law of attraction a few months before. So, I mean, I would say, like, if anyone listening is, at the beginning of something and unsure about this very thing, just go and study the law of attraction. And
can you, for anyone listening that's not familiar with what the law of attraction means or where they can go and learn about it, can you explain it a little bit in your own words?
Yeah. So the law of attraction is a universal law, and universal law meaning like that there's a universal intelligence to all life. And we all vibrate on a certain frequency. I mean, in some beliefs, like even the table is vibrating. Like, we're always moving. The earth is moving, even though it's not perceivable or perceptible. So we're all kind of vibrating. And when you are in harmony with the law of attraction, when you are totally aligned with your purpose or your self or what you want to have happen for you, you get on that vibrational frequency, right? You get emotionally involved with that version of life. For me, as an example, like being the artist who has work on, like, based on the best expression of myself as an artist, right? And so that you put that energy out, you put that frequency out in vibration when you are really truly aligned and focused and emotionally involved with what it is you want, and it comes right back to you. That's the law of attraction. It vibrationally speaking, it's just a universal law that that as you're putting it out, it's coming right back to you. So this happens all the time, no matter, like, it happens whether you're practicing it or not. It happens on a subconscious level. When you bring it into the conscious, like I am still doing, but like I did a year ago, I could understand how this works. And so I would harness that understanding and use it, to attract the kind of collectors that I want to work with.
It's really very intentional and like next level intentional, because I don't know, one of the things that I love about the law of attraction that's really simple is that you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are.
Right.
So then you just kind of go to town on becoming what you want to attract.
Yeah. Like it's not enough to want it. You have to live it.
You have to live it. Totally. Because if you really want,
get on that vibration.
Yeah, like if you really, like when I say, this type of work that I'm doing, like that excites me, where I have these commissions where I call them private grants, and I get to be in my studio. This for some people would be an absolute nightmare. There's all different kinds of people out there and all different kinds of artists. There's artists who like to have, here's a choice of 10 types of work. Please choose from 1 to 10 because I'll know how to make each one, and it's beautiful and amazing, but this is going to be my process. For me, that's stifling. For me, and sometimes I'm like in these positions where I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so important what I'm doing right now. It's so important, and at the same time, like I'm a little stuck right now in my process. Like I have to push myself. I sometimes have to rip out half of the piece that I've just created because it's not right. And so I start over again and I end up in a more beautiful direction. But that process for me is where I learn and where I grow. It is not comfortable for all types of artists. I just now understand that I love it for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That kind of goes back to like just being really aligned with what works for you and just making that happen, like as opposed to you thinking, well, this is how artists operate. They create the work and then people pick it, and that's just how it works. It's like even if it doesn't feel aligned with you, but you were aware enough to understand that that's not how I operate, and I don't feel comfortable with that. So I'm going to create my own process that feels right to me. And now look at what you're attracting. It's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
It's very cool to observe and witness your journey and watch you kind of do all these things, because we know when we see things happening, we're like, that wasn't an accident. That wasn't by chance. We're like, she did that on purpose. Totally. And it's super inspiring to watch you progress.
You. I mean, so like, let me just put some love on both of you for a second, because a huge way that I do attract my collectors and the people who follow me are by being able to have access to the most amazing content that is shot by both of you. And, I understand how important that is, that you totally get it and you see me. And then it's like this, it's just this like increase all over the place. It's like you see me and you make these stunning like films and images, and then I get to put it out there in order to attract the kind of person who's going to like connect with an image of me that you took. The whole thing is like this beautiful cycle of like yummy creativity and connection.
It totally is. Yeah.
So thanks.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go on.
Keep going.
It's just it's cool to sit back and talk about it too, because usually like we're having a meeting or we're in a shoot together, and it's just nice to like, I feel like we always just want to hang out, but it's nice.
Like going back to like we've mentioned this to you before, but what kind of inspired even this like podcast idea was our initial meetings with you that just felt so like we're just hanging out and having a coffee and having a conversation, and that's what I want.
Enlightening.
That's like what I think I speak for Shannon too. Like that's what we want to have with our clients. Like we want to attract people that don't want to like have a cold consultation. Like we want to sit down and just get real and just get to know each other, and like that's an exciting part of our process, and we've designed it that way, and are now attracting people that want to have meetings in quotation marks like that, right?
Yeah, it's so important. And once, because now you know that, it's like, well, the game is on.
The game is on. Yeah.
The game is totally on. Yeah.
So like if we were to kind of backtrack a little bit to when you were transitioning out of one career and into your now career, like from where you are now, where you've like got this established collector base, you've got this process that you've designed, you're attracting all the right people. If you were to go back in time to when that was all starting out, like how did that feel in relation to where you're at now? and what did you have to kind of go through to get to where you're at now with it?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I left photography. Like I fell in love with weaving. And I started to get like some small, just I had a show and a few people were like, would you make me a piece? And I sort of felt like that was a sign, that was kind of some momentum. And so I sort of had one foot in the photography door. Like I was still accepting clients and photo work because, again, I was like, well, I'm getting paid. But I was really loving the weaving. And I think it was just a lot of trust. There was like a clear point where, it was 3 years ago right now, actually, in the winter, I'd have all my portrait clients calling me for spring, I did a lot of family shoots back then. I had like my son was a toddler as well. So it was like I was in that mode. And I would have people calling me like, it's spring, when can we do a shoot? Or we just had a baby and, want to do some pictures. And very clearly, I just said to myself, if I don't make this leap, it's never going to happen. Like then I'll go do a whole nother season and then it'll be November when the weather's crappy again and, the work sort of slows down. That was how my business was at the time. Because I didn't really tend to it by then. I really wasn't into what I was doing, in photography. So, I just took the leap and I said, I'm so unhappy, or I'm not so unhappy, but I'm so not fulfilled with this business that I have. And I have all these clients, like I have photography clients. And I said, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like I can come back in the middle of the season, so to speak, and book more shoots if I need to. But like I was just kind of like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I was just about to turn 40 that May. And I was just like, now's the time. I'm turning 40. Like if I don't put my money where my mouth is and sort of like do the thing, I'll always regret it because you can't unring a bell.
Right.
You just can't unring a bell. It's like I knew that I didn't want to be where I was. I had this glimpse of an opportunity with weaving and a little bit of momentum coming. And I was just like, now's the time. It's time.
Wow.
It's time. And I didn't know what it would look like or how it would go down. I just knew, like,
you were inspired enough that didn't matter.
Yeah. I'm an artist. I found oh my God, how grateful was I that I found a new medium that excited me. I mean, how many artists get 2 mediums in their life to dig into? Maybe there'll be a third. I don't know how long this is going to last.
That's such an indicator of like someone like you who is focused on, like, as we mentioned kind of back at the beginning, like constant expansion and growth in your life, to be in this kind of like cushy photography career. You've got clients that are ready to call you, like you're ready to pay you. It's safe. It's easy. You've been doing it long enough, but you're like, I'm going to leave that behind to try something totally new that I don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yep.
That's like to know that you're not fulfilled in something, to take a risk like that it's like that. It's that drive to be growing, right? If you don't feel like you're growing anymore, then like, what's the point?
When you started weaving, or you started your career in weaving, did you feel like you were fully starting, like compared to when you were starting photography, did you feel like you were completely starting fresh, or did you feel like a lot of what you'd learned in your photography career, you'd be able to transfer over and utilize it still in the weaving career, maybe just in a slightly different way?
I think, I guess I really saw them as very separate, and I didn't want to have them be attached to each other in any regard. I was so over, I was really disconnected from being a photographer, yet it was my total identity. So I had to work on, like, who am I if I'm not the photographer? Who am I, even just like business wise for sure, but then even just socially, like I always had a camera with me. And then all of a sudden, like I had the freedom of not having my camera with me. And so, you know, friends would be like still asking me like, can you just come and, you know, or why, I thought you'd have your camera. It's a big event, you know, it's a celebration. And I'm like, no,
It's
you
not
know,
me anymore.
yeah. So I guess like I was already comfortable enough, being an entrepreneur, which, as you both know, is like like that, all that knowledge and experience of that is just invaluable.
It's a big, yeah.
But I really had to work on seeing my value, connecting with my value as an artist. I still work on it. Like, you know, that development of like that understanding that the dignity of like who I am as an individual it matters. It's important. What my work isn't like any other weaver's work. And to be able to, like, I've worked really hard to be able to like stand firmly within that and not shy away from it, and like feel good about it, you know?
That's amazing.
All the time though, I do when you're not around, because I wish that we like shared some kind of fantasy studio where I could just be like, hey, can you guys come and shoot this?
Come
like,
on over.
So I do pull out my camera, like, and I've pared down my equipment rig obviously over the years since being a real photographer, a professional photographer, but I still pull out my camera all the time and I take pictures of my process and my work. And every single time now I'm just like, I'm so grateful that I was a photographer, because there's so many amazing artists who don't have that ability to shoot their work and then show it. And I do, because I literally was a photographer. And the first, though, that first few years after leaving photography professionally, I couldn't even look at my camera. It really, I felt a lot of shame, and I just felt really disconnected from that whole process of the workflow and just my camera bag sitting there and charging batteries and all those things. I was like I had PTSD almost.
You're just done with it. Yeah.
So anyways, I'm figuring out a way how to do both.
That's an interesting part of it, actually, because I feel like I can relate to that, because I had a former career as a graphic designer, and I was so ready to leave that career at the time, and now I'm like really grateful that I have those skills, because I can, you know, set up our website and do any sort of like design stuff that needs to be done for our business, and I'm really grateful that I had those skills. But I think like when you're in that transition where you're leaving one thing to start something new, like you can have those kind of intrusive thoughts of like, well, what was this for? Like, was this all for naught? Like, am I giving up? Like, was this all pointless? But it's not. It's part of a journey to get you to where you are. And there's always things you can pull from experiences, good or bad.
Totally. I can see that. And I think part of the question you just asked was something like, you know, and what got you to this place you're in right now? It's like every single moment of my whole life.
Yeah.
Narrow it down. You can't narrow it down. It's a composite. It's the whole thing. It's all the layers. Totally. It's like
every tiny little thing.
Every tiny little thing. You know, and I'm paying attention to a lot of it more now in these years, and it's like the more I pay attention to it, the more it shows up, all these little things that, and so I can now in hindsight paint this like path and be like, oh, I see how that's connected to that and this. But sometimes when you're in it, you don't know why you're doing something or right? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, but it all informs you in this very moment. That's such a good reminder. So what is there to look forward to with the Jen Erin studio?
The biggest
What's the future looking like?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is just like all these commissions for this year are each single one is really inspiring for me. So I'm excited about that. And nice. But something on the horizon is, I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to be creating an installation for a room at the Gladstone Hotel this spring, and it is going to live in that room for 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They
That's amazing.
are fully renovating the hotel right now. And so they chose 40 artists to work on 40 rooms. Each artist gets a room to put up original artwork, and which will live there for 5 years. And I got chosen, which has been like, that's just really exciting. I feel like, you know, to a certain degree, like I'm paying my dues, and I'm also, you know, I feel like it feels really good to be chosen, right? It feels amazing to be selected. And I feel like that's propelling me towards wanting to do something pretty spectacular in that room.
Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to see what you do.
Well, you'll be there. You'll be filming it.
Yes. Yes.
You'll be part of the magnificent process.
Oh my goodness. Such an honor.
So then your audience has our work of your work to look forward to.
You got it.
Amazing.
It's a spiral, an upward spiral.
Oh, yeah.
An upward spiral. Yeah, to be clear. Yeah. Amazing. Well, it's really such a pleasure to be so connected to you. This past year has been wonderful getting to know you and watching your progression, and I can't wait to watch it keep going and to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you had something to say.
Well,
about
I was just going to say, like, I feel like I will say the exact same thing to both of you. I absolutely love working with you and shining our light together and laughing and going through the ups and downs of shoot preparations. You know, you're always so supportive and easily able to roll with schedule changes or random things coming by. It's like it's so supportive to me. And you know, when I look back at my grid, you know, I'm just like, I'm so happy that all of your work is all over it, and helping me and stuff. So, and like, just thanks.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
We're so glad to see that in your grid too.
Yes. Thank you for trusting us.
Yeah.
It feels like it always feels like a collaboration working with you. Okay. Well, where can people follow along with you and find you if they want to learn more about what you're up to?
Sure. So I have a website, of course, which is jenaron.com, JENARRON. That trips people up most of the time. 1A, 2 R's. And then my Instagram is jenaron.studio. And that's more of like a daily process, kind of what I'm up to. And both places you can connect with me, find what I'm doing, look at it, love it.
Lots of eye candy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Jen. It's always so fun chatting with you.
My pleasure. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you so much.